This is SSN
Story Studio Network.
Hi, I'm Dean Gation. Welcome to the first episode of my podcast, Powerful Connections. For over 40 years, I've been involved in planning and building high-voltage projects. My company, DGG5 Advising, is the opportunity maker you need for your energy and construction projects. My guests and I are going to share our experiences and how we have brought projects to successful completion. For my first episode, I thought it would be good to have some help introducing myself. So I've invited Dave Trafford from Story Studio Network onto the podcast. Dave, thanks for being here.
This is a little unusual for me because this is not my show, but I'm hosting this episode of Powerful Connections. And the reason that I'm doing this is because as we explored the ideas behind this and Dean's company and the idea that this tells an extraordinary story about pretty complicated infrastructure. But I always find, Dean, that guys like you, they suffer from the curse of knowledge. You got all that brilliance rolling around in your brain that sometimes guys like me need time to catch up to what's going on in there. Listen, thanks for lending your voice to the Story Studio Network. And I'm anxious to, first of all, just to kind of get a little bit of background in terms of what it is you do. You talk about the large power projects that go on right across the country. They're, I imagine, each one unique, each one more or less complicated than the next. But there is no necessary template for how you execute these complicated infrastructure projects.
Yeah, there is and there isn't. The issues that people get into, and I can only characterize them as you don't know what you don't know. Mm. And through a lot of the things we've done in experience and knowledge and School of Hard Knocks and growing up through this and seeing the successes and the failures, there is kind of a template that I'm trying to bring to what I do. And that's why my focus was 5 services, because there's many services required, but the planning part, the risk review part, the thinking out loud of how the result will be detailed, scheduled, logged out, those things are what we call the devil in the details. And not knowing them or knowing where to start or who to talk to or who to connect to or who in the network is that subject matter expert, that's kind of where I've been. And I guess you call it project management. And I'm trying to help people manage their decisions and their directions and their strategy by not being that decision maker, but being that advisor. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this came through all the things that I've done over the years in many decades of being in the power business and our family business and being a business owner and being involved in associations and helping customers get to where they got to go to. Is I got to a point where I did the director's education program through U of T and the Rotman's School of Management. And it was truly the right time to do it at this moment in time when we knew we were probably getting out of being an owner and helping expand our business into being something bigger. And it was time to move on. And this just seemed to be natural to go to that coaching, mentor, advisor stage. And I needed that formal push from the U of T to say, this is what you should do. And out of talking to more people, like my friend JP Gladue at CCAB, he had just started Makwate. And I asked him how he got there. And he said, you need help. And everywhere I went was help. Rena Bast, who helped me with my strategy, and Leslie Robb, who helped me with my website and branding and so forth, and who led me to Aaron and Jamie at SSN, because I said, I want to do something more to get the word out of what I'm doing so I can help more people, because there is going to be, from all of the activities we're doing, some guidance and templates that will come out of this. And that's kind of the stride of what I want to do, is to show people how to get there. What's the outline? What's the template? What's the plan? And so that's when we focused on the services that I do. And they start with relationship building. And the business development part has always been key and connected to relationship building. And then out of that, when you get inside with people that they say, you know, if we're trying to figure this out, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. So it's the plan to help them get to the successful closure of their project, their outcome, to build the right asset, to get the right solution. And there's many opportunities come along the way, many economic developments come along the way. And that's when we start talking about risk management and project planning and all those things. And there's a variety of people that I want to get to talk to about this. And it's going to be a lot of fun. But I think getting a start with you will be really good. Okay.
So, and it's as you speak about this, and I know specifically you're talking about large power transmission projects.
Small, medium, and large, but the large ones are the ones that get more complicated.
But as you describe what you were just talking about and the journey you've gone through and the advice that you're kind of walking through, this sounds very much like a template, let's use the word, that could be applied to a whole bunch of other businesses. I mean, that strategy, those 5 steps are the kind of thing that's probably the backbone of any successful projects, business, startup, or larger institution. Where I find it's interesting in terms of the things that you're navigating are often intersections of just different jurisdictions. And that might be more complicated than the technology you're talking about.
It is.
And how do you, again, right back to your first point, relationships are important. Because you may be talking to 2 or 3 different levels of government. You might be talking to a First Nations community. You might be talking to an international partner because it somehow crosses the Canadian border into the U.S. How often does someone who comes to you misunderstand that web of communication or the ability to navigate it?
Often. And usually that's why I'm getting a call. Somebody's heard about something or somebody's seen something or somebody that's involved in one step along the way. And it could be a political advisor, a lawyer, an engineer, a general contractor. And it's to a point where the reason behind what we're doing right now with this podcast is for people to find out who to reach out to, where to reach out, because they are searching for somebody to help them navigate a big ordeal that's going to take time. You look at some of these projects, it might take 3 or 4 months to do a small project. And in that 3 or 4 months, you've had to do management plans, contract negotiation, subcontractor negotiations, First Nation, jobs fairs or partnering. There's a lot of things that you have to do and get the work executed. So how do I go execute that work and not stumble along the way? That's kind of where I try to help them to make those management plans, those management processes that a lot of companies are looking for and missing today. I can bring them to them, but I simplify them, because one of the things we had to do when we created our health and safety program and our quality management program was they had to be not an anvil around our neck, but a competitive advantage. We had to be consistent in what we did. We had to be good at what we did. We had to be unique in what we did. Not necessarily the biggest or the best, but really good at what you're doing, and the customer gets something different when they show up with you helping them. So I'm trying to bring all of those do's and don'ts, best practices, industry leading edge, competitive edge to somebody to understand how that works for them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in high voltage. I've helped do business development for engineering firms. I've helped in risk review for large general contractors. I help a right-of-way clearing fellow that's nearby. I help a civil contractor that's nearby. It's the mindset that leadership needs to give people the authority to go do their work, and then all of a sudden you've got resources that are performing.
So, I mean, as you sort of outline the characters that you might have been involved with in terms of some of the sectors in the business, when I initially came to this, I thought, who is your first point of contact on some of these small, medium, large projects? But I gather that really the service you're providing is at whatever point along that process, you are helping that individual navigate the relationships that are required to execute the show.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I want to get across, is that I enter the picture at different points and sometimes exit the picture. There's an engineering firm I helped in their process of trying to become a very good service provider to a very large provincial utility. And some of that needed the right meeting, the right focus, the right connections, the right understanding, and I helped them through it. They're really good. That's why they got hired. They're very good at what they do. They needed to understand the Ontario marketplace. They needed to understand where to start, and it took a couple of years, and we knew it would. The utility sectors and institutional areas, they take a little longer to do stuff, review stuff, make decisions on things, and now they're in a position where they're touching a lot of stuff, and I'm seeing them with other customers and other projects where they're playing this role as owner's engineer. And it's kind of cool to see it, but I know where the confidentiality lines are. I know where the point of conflicts are. And there's certain times where I have to tell people, I can't help you. I'm already helping somebody else in this same. So it might be two contractors chasing a job, and I'll have to pick the one that came to me first or pick the one that I've been working with. It doesn't happen very often, but it can. And my understanding of all of those idiosyncrasies of making sure I don't break the confidence of somebody or breach an agreement with somebody, that can get very critical. And understanding contract language and contract agreements is another part of what I do. And it's everything in insurance and bonding and banking and indemnification and liquidated damages and all the ugly things that get into contracts that you have to decipher, evaluate, and move on. So you either want to do the job and work with those things and understand how to manage the risk, or you say that's not for us. So that's decision making that you can help people get through. But I do enter owner's level at the absolute concept of day one. Well, how are we going to do this? I help established companies go do the next one and do it better. I help small subcontractors who are getting really good going, how do I get to know that general contractor or that owner? How do I get into that sector? That's where I help them open doors for them. I've done that recently for 3 or 4 companies, and the relationships have everybody flourishing and making money and doing well. And that's what I want to do, is connect the right people at the right place.
Yeah. So, I mean, the years of experience from the technical perspective are one thing, but the ability to broker the relationship that's most effective for the project, I think, is the secret sauce we're talking about here.
Yeah. Like I've got a current project that I'm kind of entering at 3 levels, and I'm trying to keep the picture separate for myself, but I'm seeing the bigger picture with the owner and developer, and they're trying to do something with a request for service. And they've made the request so big, they've eliminated some of the really good players. And so I've told a couple of the players, go talk to this person and talk about this job with them. And then I've called the owner and said, we may want to negotiate something to help you solve this solution for your owner. So all those conversations go on without disclosing anything other than steering people towards the right arrangement, which is these two should get together and then go talk to this person, and this job's going to get executed, and it'll be successful. It'll be on budget, and it'll be a good asset for the customer. A lot of times people do an evaluation, and the first thing they do is the knee-jerk reaction to the cheapest price, as opposed to living with their evaluation on qualifications, past performance, references. Do they have the viability? Have they done this before? Have they worked in this region before? And there's some very major projects that are suffering because they got pulled into the business model of getting the cheapest price, and they end up in quite a dilemma, going way above and beyond what they could have done with a better evaluation and a better selection. So,
well, but what you're describing so often is a governmental approach in many respects.
Yes.
We're going to look at the lowest bidder, and you kind of, there's a danger in that.
There is a danger, but there's a danger in not evaluating. And part of the evaluation is scoring the price, because the price is critical, but the ability to do the work, the ability to perform, the response and the plan, are all part of that execution. What's your Indigenous engagement plan? What's your schedule say? Where's your allowances on this job? Have you done a good risk review? And yes, I see your price is low, but you've left this, and this out, or you've said these are extra. I need an allowance or a price, or you need to deal with these in order for me to truly compare. And that's where evaluations break down, is customers don't evaluate like for like. They just get a cheap price, and the devil is in the details again, and they get into the job and sign an agreement. And the next thing you know, oh, well, we said that, but this is what we meant. And so the evaluation and the disclosure before signing is a real critical one. And planning and evaluating is a big part of what we do to help people on both sides, whether they're receiving responses or doing the response, to help people respond to an RFP. One of the ones I'm doing right now is to help a large company and an engineering firm that have got together. And I gave them some philosophy of how to approach the first part of the project in order to be successful on the very big part of the project. So do you do keep your numbers down and work with the customer on the 3 to 5 million part to get into the planning part, and then show them the true identity when you've done the risk review for the $1 billion job. So don't try to make a big gob of money on the $5 million job. Go make your money at reasonable markups and profits on the bigger job. Mm-hmm. But you need the opportunity to go get the big job.
For sure. And I know you're going to, that again, back to relationships. You've got 12 shows lined up here, and you got some really strong voices to talk about some of those very specific things that you want to get to. So we'll let people explore that as we release the show. We've got a few minutes here before we go. And okay. I said, we wanted to have you introduce yourself. You're talking about decades of experience now. And these are things, like I said, you got the curse of knowledge. These are things that top of mind, you can just rattle off. What brought you to this? Where did all this start?
Without knowing, being born in the table of clairigation at his table and just watching what he did without knowing, you got steered into it. It got interesting. It got enticing. We had a family farm, and again, the other enticing was my mother, Ida, who was an unbelievable lady and skill in her time and her giving and so forth. And that's who we became, as the givers and the communicators. And my dad worked hard at what he did, but we still saw lots of opportunities that we could do something different. The things we did as young people, you wouldn't do today. I was operating a tractor at 10 years old. I was doing things for my dad, unloading equipment at 14 years old. I was working underground at Denison Mines at 16, but at the time, there was no rules in place. And a lot of that brought us to that, living and breathing some of the turmoil in the mining sector in the mid-70s and seeing some of the issues they had, the creation of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, living and breathing some of the good and bad of that, becoming involved in construction associations. By the time I was 27, I'd been in the field for quite a few years and had just about finished my education. And my brother called me the day I finished my schooling for electrical engineering technology. And I was about to go enjoy that with my schoolmates. And he said, we have to meet tomorrow. And I said, no, I won't be sober in the morning. So in a couple of days, maybe. So, I was enjoying the achievement of this, and he threw in my face, and we need to talk. And at 23 years old, I moved into the office. At 27, my brother and I bought my dad's half of the business out. By 30, we had experienced one of the worst things you can in a business is we started doing a job and got stiffed on a lot of money. And so we learned contract language, we learned negotiating, we learned guarantees, we learned what bonds were and all of these things. And the more I got involved in association work and provincial work, the more we realized we needed to get better. And it just drove us to better. The standards we had to meet, the training we needed, the safety and quality came into our thing. We became the first ISO certified line contractor in the mid-90s. That was unheard of. We wanted process, we wanted consistency, and we wanted to be able to plug people in no matter what the process was. And that was our mindset, was we wanted to be, again, unique, but we wanted to bring that to people. And we started doing projects we shouldn't have. We got into many, many big projects, Detour Lake, transmission line, Five Nations Energy, Lower Matagami River, many wind projects in Chatham, Tillsonburg, Sault Ste. Marie, Thunder Bay, and many other projects with some big contractors. And we got into many sectors. We realized we had to have other sectors in case some of them went down, and it was mining and pulp and forestry and generation and utility work besides construction work. And we learned all of those sectors and areas and the idiosyncrasies of contract. And then we educated ourselves, conferences, training sessions. We learned risk management. We learned contract language. We understood insurance and bonding and business development really well. And it brought us to a point of getting into manufacturing equipment and so forth. And when we got to 2014, we decided we just didn't have the pockets to go chase what we wanted. So we sold our business and tried to make it a bigger thing. And as the years went by, my brother retired, and it was time for me to move on. And that's when I decided I wanted to do what I'm doing today and help as many as I could, because I'd been through the ringer, and it was time for me to help others get better. And, that's kind of where I'm at, and what I want to do with this podcast is to just expand on that.
Well, and again, it started off by saying so much of what you talked about might be specific to the industry in the particular sector around the power sector and energy. But, there are a lot of lessons I suspect people are going to be able to glean as we move forward.
There are.
And what I learned from talking to you is that you're a natural mentor. So I think you're probably the good guy to have in the chair. Dean, I'm looking forward to hearing the series, and welcome to Story Studio Network.
Thanks very much. Thanks for listening to this episode of Powerful Connections. Get in touch with me on my website at DGG5Advising.com or find me on LinkedIn at Dean G. Gation. See you on the next episode.